You have no right to accuse your aunt of sabotaging the family business retreat plans, Brooke. Your brother has always carried the weight of these silent asset transfers to keep everything running smoothly, and you're making us all look unstable with your paranoid questions. If you don't drop this nonsense and sign the transfer papers right now, you'll find yourself cut out of the entire family legacy here at the Vale Lodge, and don't you dare make a scene in front of the business partners. Hi, my name is Brooke Ellison. I am 35 years old. The words from my mother landed like ice water down my back in the middle of the private conference room at the Vale Luxury Mountain Retreat. We had come up here for what was supposed to be a family business strategy weekend to review the lodge expansion, but the atmosphere had turned chaotic the moment I raised a simple point about some irregular transfers I had spotted in the quarterly reports. My aunt sat across the long oak table with that familiar, tight smile, her fingers drumming lightly on a stack of documents, while my brother leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching the exchange like it was just another Tuesday. I felt my stomach tighten but kept my voice steady. "I'm not accusing anyone of anything yet," I said, sliding the printed phone log across the polished table toward them. "But these calls between my aunt and the offshore account manager don't add up. The amounts are vanishing without any corresponding project invoices. If we're going public with the expansion pitch to the investors tomorrow, we need transparency." My mother's eyes narrowed. She snatched the papers before anyone else could reach for them. "Transparency from you. After everything your aunt has done to hold this family together, you're the one who's always been too calculated, too driven to see the bigger picture. Your brother and your aunt have been managing the slush fund quietly for years, so the lodge doesn't collapse under the mountain of debt from the last renovation. You think your little compliance consulting gig gives you the right to play detective here." The room felt smaller, the mountain air outside the tall windows doing nothing to ease the tension. My husband sat beside me and gave my knee a subtle squeeze under the table, but he stayed silent for now, letting me handle it. Our 8-year-old daughter was in the kids' activity room down the hall with the other families, thankfully out of earshot. I had brought her along thinking the fresh mountain air and family time might be good after a rough school year, but now I regretted it. My aunt leaned forward, her voice dripping with that cold sarcasm she reserved for these moments. "Brooke, darling, you're overreacting again. Those transfers were just routine adjustments to keep cash flow steady. If you keep pushing this, you're only going to embarrass yourself in front of the business partners." Marcus Hale, my brother's longtime business partner and one of the key investors in the lodge expansion, shifted uncomfortably in his seat at the end of the table. He had been quiet until now, but I caught the way his eyes flicked between us. "Look, I'm here to support the project, not get dragged into family drama," he said, his tone careful but firm. "Your brother assured me everything was clean. If there's any truth to these logs, though, we might need to pause the pitch." That was the first real crack. My mother shot Marcus a sharp look, but it was my aunt who spoke next, voice rising just enough to make the unstable energy in the room spike. "See what you've done, Brooke. Now even the partners are doubting us. Your brother talked some sense into your sister before she ruins the entire weekend." My brother rubbed his temples, sighing like I was the exhausting one. "She's always been like this, Mom, overthinking every detail." "Your aunt has been handling the books the way Grandpa taught her, quietly, efficiently. Brooke just signed the damn authorization so we can move forward. The retreat investors are arriving in the morning, and we can't afford any whispers about instability." I stared at the phone log printout still clutched in my mother's hand. The timestamps matched calls I had overheard my aunt making late last night from the lodge balcony, her voice low and urgent. Something about redirecting the final tranche before the audit window closes. My skin prickled with the kind of cold detachment that usually came right before I uncovered something rotten in a client's books. This wasn't just sloppy accounting. This felt deliberate. I forced a small nod, playing along for the moment. "Fine, I'll review the full statements tonight and sign in the morning if everything checks out." The lie came out smooth, detached, the same way I handled forensic audits at work. But inside, the chaos of the weekend was already building like a storm rolling down the mountainside. Later that evening, after the group dinner where everyone smiled for the sake of the resort staff, I slipped away to the quiet corner of the lodge library with my laptop. My husband had taken our daughter for a quick walk around the lighted paths to give me space. The fire crackled softly in the stone hearth, but I barely noticed. I pulled up the shared drive and started cross referencing the phone logs with the account statements my aunt had reluctantly emailed me earlier. That's when the first real shock hit. Buried in a folder labeled Routine Maintenance were hidden account statements showing transfers that didn't match any lodge expenses. Hundreds of thousands of dollars funneled into a private account under my aunt's name over the last 18 months. Silent asset transfers, just like the logs hinted. No paper trail for the family books, no mention in any meeting minutes. It was my brother's private slush fund, and my aunt had been the one executing the moves. My fingers paused on the keyboard. If I confronted them now, the whole retreat would explode. But if I waited, I could gather more. I printed the statements quietly on the library printer, folded them into my bag, and stepped out into the hallway, just as Elena Vargas, my trusted colleague from the compliance firm who had come along as a neutral advisor for the expansion pitch, rounded the corner. "Brooke, you okay?" she asked, voice low. Elena had been on my sounding board for years, more like chosen family than a coworker at this point. "I saw the way your mother shut you down in the meeting. Marcus is already texting me asking if he should pull his commitment. The partners are choosing sides and it doesn't look good for you." I showed her the folded printouts. "This goes deeper than I thought. My aunt has been moving money out silently and my mother is covering for it. My brother is using it to prop up the lodge facade." Elena's eyes widened. "You need to be careful. If they find out you have these, the weekend turns into a war. But if we can get solid proof before tomorrow's pitch..." Her words hung there as footsteps echoed down the hall. My mother appeared at the far end, her face tight with that unstable mix of anger and control she wore so well lately. "Brooke, we need to talk. Now! Your aunt is waiting in the private suite, and she's not happy about the way you're stirring things up." I slipped the papers into my bag and met her gaze with the same cold detachment I used in every audit. "I'm coming," I said. But as we walked, my mind was already racing ahead to what I might find in that suite and how far I was willing to push before the entire family facade at this mountain retreat came crashing down around us. If your own mother stood there defending your aunt's secret financial moves, while the business partners started picking sides and your daughter's future felt like it was on the line, what would you do next? Would you play along and dig deeper or walk away before it got worse? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one, and hearing your stories helps more than you know. The night stretched on in our suite at the Vale Luxury Mountain Retreat as I sat with the printed statements laid out like evidence in one of my audits. My husband stood close, offering silent strength, while I connected the dots between the phone logs and the slush fund movements my aunt had orchestrated with my brother's knowledge. The cold detachment that served me well in my compliance consulting work kept my hands steady even as the chaotic energy of the family weekend threatened to pull everything apart. This betrayal felt deeply personal, coming from the woman who raised me, and the aunt who had always claimed to have the family's best interests at heart. I stepped out to meet Elena in a quiet alcove near the library. She had already started digging using her secure connections from the firm. "These hidden account statements show more than transfers," she whispered, pointing to a line on her screen. "Your aunt routed funds in a way that quietly blocked the consulting contract that was nearly yours, Brooke. They didn't want your driven approach influencing the lodge direction." The revelation added another layer to the mid-story twist, confirming how the silent asset transfers were not only financial, but a way to suppress my role in the family business. We compiled a stronger file, my mind calculating the next steps with precision. By morning, the dining hall at the retreat was filled with the aroma of fresh coffee and the low hum of conversation from the gathered partners. Our daughter sat happily beside me until the discussion turned tense. My mother opened with sharp words directed straight at me. "Brooke, your insistence on questioning your aunt's methods is creating unnecessary chaos here. Your brother has managed the private slush fund to protect all of us, and your aunt has executed the transfers flawlessly. Sign the papers, or the partners will see exactly how unstable your accusations make you look." My aunt added her cutting sarcasm. "It's almost admirable how you think your little investigations trump years of family sacrifice, but it really just shows why we can't trust you with the bigger picture." My brother stayed quiet but supportive of them, while Marcus expressed some doubt. Then Grant Thompson, the key new partner who had aligned closely with my aunt's vision, spoke up. I've reviewed the summaries from your aunt and your mother. The lodge needs unity, not division. I'm leaning toward proceeding as planned, unless Brooke has ironclad proof that changes the risk profile. The secondary conflict became clear as the partners began choosing sides, with Grant backing the family line and Marcus holding back, creating visible rifts that made the pitch meeting feel like a ticking bomb. During a break, our daughter pulled me aside after overhearing fragments of my mother's conversation with my aunt about handling Brooke's interference before it spreads. Her little face showed confusion, asking if we were leaving the mountain early. The moment reminded me of the high stakes, but I reassured her calmly and sent her with my husband to enjoy the snow activities, the encounter leaving me with renewed resolve but a heavy heart. Elena and I used the break to access additional records in the business center. The new details showed the full extent of how the funds were used to undermine opportunities that would have empowered me. As we finished, my mother found me again, her voice low and vicious. This is your last chance to align with the family, Brooke. Drop it, or we will make sure the entire retreat knows how your calculated nature has always been the real problem. The pressure was unbearable, every jab hitting deep into the pattern of control I had endured for years. I made the calculated decision to prepare a quiet redirection of what I could document, planning to involve a neutral authority figure at the retreat for review. But as I headed to the afternoon session, a call came in from a compliance contact who had received an anonymous tip twisting the facts against me. The unstable situation was spiraling. Partners divided, my mother and my aunt united in their defense of the betrayal, and the painful choice looming closer than ever. The mountain winds outside seemed to mock the fragile peace as I realized the ironic twist might be that gaining my freedom could mean losing the business legacy entirely. Yet I felt the first stirrings of graceful boundary setting taking shape in my mind. I walked into the main lodge conference hall the next morning with the compiled folder of phone logs and hidden account statements tucked under my arm, the chaotic energy of the family retreat now crackling like static before a storm. The pitch session for the expansion was scheduled to begin in less than an hour, and every business partner was already seated around the long table, coffee cups steaming while the mountain light poured through the tall windows. My mother took the floor almost immediately, her voice cutting through the murmurs with that unstable edge she had sharpened over the weekend. Before we dive into the numbers, I need to address something directly, she said, turning her gaze straight at me. Brooke, your constant digging into your aunt's management of the private slush fund is creating real damage here. Your brother and your aunt have kept this lodge afloat with those silent asset transfers for years, and your calculated interference is making everyone question the stability we've worked so hard to project. Sign the authorization papers now, or the partners will see exactly how your driven nature disrupts what we've built together. My aunt nodded, beside her lips pressed into a thin line of contempt. It's not just disruption, Diane. It's outright sabotage of the family vision. We all saw how Brooke's questions rattled Marcus yesterday. If she keeps pushing this paranoid angle, the entire pitch falls apart. My brother shifted in his seat, eyes flicking toward Grant Thompson, who had aligned himself firmly with their side after private conversations the night before. Grant cleared his throat and spoke up, his tone measured but decisive. I've reviewed the summaries your aunt provided. The transfers look like standard internal adjustments to me. We need unity for the investors arriving this afternoon. Brooke, if you have concrete proof beyond speculation, now's the time. Otherwise, I'm voting to proceed as planned and keep the family leadership intact. Marcus Hale, the partner who had wavered earlier, rubbed his jaw and glanced at Elena Vargas sitting quietly beside me. I'm still concerned about the phone logs Brooke showed me. Those timestamps don't line up with any documented expenses. If there's a slush fund operating outside the books, the lodge could face serious compliance issues down the line. The room split visibly down the middle, the secondary conflict exploding into open tension as partners murmured and checked their phones. My mother leaned forward, her words laced with cold sarcasm that hit straight at the core of every insecurity she had ever planted in me. See what you've started. Brooke, you're the one turning a simple family strategy weekend into this unstable circus. Your aunt has poured everything into keeping the legacy alive while you chase your compliance consulting career and pretend you know better than the rest of us. Drop the investigation or accept that you're choosing yourself over the family that raised you. I kept my expression detached, the same calm mask I wore during high stakes audits, even as the chaos pressed in from all sides. My husband sat beside me, his hand steady on my knee under the table, while our daughter played quietly in the adjacent family lounge with a resort sitter safely out of the fray. Elena slid a fresh printout across to me under the table, more routing details she had pulled overnight, showing how the silent transfers had quietly blocked a consulting contract that would have given me direct oversight of the expansion. Before I could respond, the lodge's head of legal operations, Thomas Reed, entered the room carrying a tablet and a thick folder. He had been pulled in quietly by Elena earlier as an external compliance advisor to the retreat property, itself not aligned with any family side. I was asked to review some preliminary documents for the pitch. Thomas said, his voice professional and even. There are irregularities in the account activity tied to these phone logs. I recommend we pause the public investor presentation until an independent audit can confirm everything is clean. This isn't personal, it's standard procedure when discrepancies surface this close to a major funding round. The announcement landed like a match on dry tinder, my mother's face flushed with barely contained rage. Thomas, this is exactly the kind of overreach Brooke is encouraging. Your brother and your aunt have managed the private slush fund precisely to avoid unnecessary audits that could scare off partners. If we delay now, the entire mountain retreat expansion collapses and Brooke will have no one to blame but herself. My aunt's voice rose, unstable and sharp. You're forcing us into this corner, Brooke. All because you couldn't let the family handle things the way we always have. Your brother built this place while you were busy being the calculated outsider. Sign the papers, step back, and let us protect what matters. The partners shifted uncomfortably. Grant Thompson stood first. I'm with your mother and your aunt on this. Stability matters more than one person's questions. We proceed with the pitch and address any audit concerns after the commitments are secured. Several others nodded in agreement, choosing the familiar family line over the uncertainty I represented. Marcus hesitated, then sighed. I'll hold my commitment for now, but I'm not walking away entirely. This feels too messy. The meeting fractured into heated side conversations, the chaotic, unstable vibe of the weekend reaching its peak as voices overlapped and phones buzzed with urgent texts to investors. I sat there absorbing every jab, every sarcastic dismissal from my mother, feeling the weight of the pattern I had carried for years. This wasn't just about money or the lodge anymore. It was about control, the same control that had always demanded my silence in exchange for a seat at the table. In that moment, the painful choice crystallized with cold clarity. I stood slowly, folder in hand, and addressed the room without raising my voice. I won't sign anything that endorses hidden transfers or blocks transparency. The evidence is here for anyone who wants to see it, but I'm choosing not to fight for a legacy that requires me to ignore what's right. The lodge, the expansion, the family business, you can have it. I'm stepping away completely. My mother's eyes widened, then narrowed into pure contempt. You're really doing this, walking out on everything after we gave you every opportunity? Fine, but don't expect any part of this legacy to follow you, Brooke. The fortune stays with those who actually built it. My aunt smirked beside her, the betrayal complete. My brother said nothing, simply shaking his head as if I had finally proven their point about my instability. Thomas Reed stepped in quietly afterward, offering to facilitate a neutral separation of any traceable personal interests I still held from the trust. My husband and Elena flanked me as we left the conference hall, the mountain air hitting my face like a fresh start, even as the pain of the loss settled in. Our daughter ran to us in the hallway, sensing the shift, but smiling when my husband scooped her up and whispered that we were heading home early. Over the next few weeks back in our quiet suburban life, the ironic twist unfolded exactly as the numbers had hinted it might. My mother and my aunt, desperate to shield the remaining assets after Thomas flagged the irregularities to the retreat's board, quietly redirected the bulk of the family fortune into new accounts that excluded me entirely. They thought they had won by cutting me out, preserving their control and the unstable facade of the lodge. But in the process, they had isolated themselves from the one person who had always questioned the hidden moves, and the quiet redirection meant a small separate portion of funds that could be legally traced to my documented contributions ended up secured in a protected trust for our daughter's future education and security. I never fought for more. I simply let it happen, the graceful boundary I had chosen, leaving me free without the constant weight of their chaos. Elena became even more like chosen family in the months that followed, joining us for quiet dinners where we talked about real support instead of control. My husband and our daughter thrived in the peace we built together, the three of us creating traditions that felt warm and stable, far from the mountain retreat's unstable storms. My mother reached out, once voice tight with resentment, demanding I reconsider for the family's sake. But I ended the call gently and blocked the number, releasing the last toxic tie without drama or explanation. The lesson settled in slowly, but deeply chosen family heals best when you finally release the ones who only offer conditional love wrapped in control. I didn't win the legacy or the fortune, and the business partners who chose sides kept the lodge running under the same hidden patterns. But I gained something quieter and more lasting, the freedom to protect my daughter and build a life on my own terms without the constant fear of the next silent transfer or sarcastic jab. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever faced a moment where setting boundaries meant losing part of what you thought defined you, but gaining real peace in return, what choice did you make? Would you do it again? Knowing the cost, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.